Los Angeles is famous for what exists above the ground. Hollywood studios, freeways, mansions, and millions of people packed into one enormous urban landscape. But beneath the traffic, homes and office towers lies something most cities could never hide: oil. Not a few isolated pockets, but the remains of one of the richest petroleum systems ever discovered in North America. For almost 150 years, companies have drilled beneath Los Angeles, pulling billions of barrels from fields that eventually became surrounded by neighborhoods. And now, scientists have completed a new assessment of what may still be hiding below the city. Their answer tells us how much undiscovered oil could remain, but it also reveals something much stranger, because the real discovery is not simply that Los Angeles still has oil. It is what happened to the enormous petroleum empire that once existed beneath it. And to understand that, we first have to explain how a city became an oil field in the first place. Drive through most of Los Angeles, and there is little reason to believe you are crossing an active petroleum basin. The city has expanded so completely that its oil infrastructure now exists within the urban landscape. Wells and production facilities can sit near homes, parks, schools, and commercial buildings. Some occupy visible oil fields. Others are enclosed by walls or surrounded by development that arrived long after drilling began. California's official well database still maps active, idle, and abandoned wells across the region. But these wells are only surface clues. Below them, oil fields spread horizontally through complicated layers of sandstone and fractured rock. A single drilling site can reach reservoirs located far beneath surrounding streets. That creates an extraordinary situation. Los Angeles was not built beside an oil field. Much of the city was built directly over one. But the oil did not begin with the modern city, or even with California's modern coastline. Its story began millions of years earlier, when much of the Los Angeles basin was underwater. During the Miocene, organic material accumulated in marine sediments beneath ancient waters. As layer after layer was buried, heat and pressure slowly transformed some of that organic matter into hydrocarbons. One of the most important source rocks was the Monterey Formation, a thick, organic-rich sequence capable of generating enormous quantities of oil and gas. But source rock alone does not create a productive oil basin. The oil also needs somewhere to collect. Southern California's violent tectonic history helped create those spaces. The crust stretched, shifted, and sank, forming a deep basin that eventually accumulated as much as 9 kilometers of sediment. Later, compression folded and faulted those layers, creating underground traps where migrating oil could gather inside porous sandstone. It was an almost perfect petroleum system. Organic-rich source rocks generated the oil. Fractures gave it pathways. Sandstone provided reservoirs, and folds and faults trapped it beneath the surface. But those same fractures created a problem. Some oil escaped completely, migrating upward until it reached the surface as natural petroleum seeps. The La Brea tar pits are the most famous example, and those visible seeps gave early explorers an unmistakable clue. Los Angeles was sitting on something enormous, but no one yet understood just how enormous it would become. Oil exploration in the Los Angeles basin began during the 1880s. What followed transformed the landscape. Derricks appeared in dense clusters. New fields were discovered beneath areas that would later become some of the most heavily developed parts of Southern California. At the time, many of these places were still open land, but oil attracted investment, workers, roads, and industry. The settlements around the fields grew, and the city eventually expanded around the machinery that had helped finance it. The relationship between Los Angeles and petroleum was therefore reversed. The wells were not originally inserted into an already completed metropolis. In many places, the metropolis arrived later. Production spread through fields including Wilmington, Long Beach, Inglewood, Salt Lake, Santa Fe Springs, and numerous smaller accumulations. And over the following century, the amount of petroleum discovered or produced across the wider Los Angeles basin reached an almost unbelievable scale, approximately 9 billion barrels. That is the first number needed to understand the new scientific assessment, because after 9 billion barrels have already been identified or removed, asking how much remains becomes far more complicated than looking for one untouched underground lake. Oil does not exist beneath Los Angeles as a single cavern of black liquid. It is scattered through thousands of feet of rock, and after nearly 150 years of exploration, the easiest deposits were found a long time ago. This creates an obvious question. If Los Angeles has been drilled for generations. How could any oil remain undiscovered? The answer lies in the basin's complexity. Faults divide reservoirs into separate compartments. Some structures are too small to have attracted early development. Others lie beneath areas where access is difficult, expensive, or politically impossible. Oil may also remain inside the source rocks themselves, rather than inside the conventional sandstone traps targeted by older wells. And importantly, undiscovered does not necessarily mean that nobody suspects the oil is there. It means the accumulation has not yet been proven as a discovered commercial field. Scientists can identify geological conditions that may contain oil without knowing the precise location or size of every deposit. But this creates a dangerous temptation. The moment an enormous city is placed over a petroleum basin, almost any estimate can sound plausible. A hidden billion barrels. Perhaps a few hundred million, possibly almost nothing. That possibility cannot be dismissed either. So, rather than guess, scientists divided the basin into several different geological areas and examined each one separately. And what they found would dramatically change the meaning of Los Angeles' hidden oil. The U.S. Geological Survey assessed 4 major units within the Los Angeles basin. 3 represented continuous resources, where oil or gas may remain distributed through source rocks such as the Monterey Shale. The 4th represented conventional reservoirs, the more familiar oil fields where petroleum migrated into porous rock and became trapped. Scientists used the basin's known geology, existing fields, production history, reservoir sizes, untested areas, and expected drilling success to model what undiscovered accumulations might remain. They were not identifying a single newly discovered field. They were calculating a probability distribution. That distinction matters. An assessment cannot tell us that exactly one deposit, containing an exact number of barrels, is waiting beneath a particular neighborhood. Instead, it estimates the combined resources that may exist across the geological province. The result, therefore, came with a wide range. At the low end, the basin could hold only a relatively limited amount of undiscovered oil. At the high end, it could contain several times the central estimate. But even before revealing that estimate, scientists found an important clue. Most of the remaining potential was not expected to come from some revolutionary shale oil transformation. Approximately 80% was associated with conventional reservoirs. That suggests the most important undiscovered resources may look less like one enormous new formation and more like smaller fields or overlooked compartments hidden among structures geologists already understand. But even if those fields exist, another question changes everything. Would Los Angeles ever allow them to be developed? The scientific question asks how much oil may exist. The political question asks whether anyone should extract it. Urban drilling has become increasingly controversial as Los Angeles has grown around its oil facilities. Research involving residents near South Los Angeles production sites has reported associations between proximity to drilling and health indicators, including elevated diastolic blood pressure. The larger debate includes air pollution, noise, industrial accidents, greenhouse gas emissions, and the burden placed on communities located closest to oil operations. Los Angeles attempted to prohibit new extraction and phase out existing drilling through an ordinance adopted in 2022. That policy was later rescinded following a court ruling. But the story did not end there. After California reaffirmed the ability of local governments to regulate oil operations, the city moved to restore its phase-out policy. In June 2026, the City Council again approved plans prohibiting new extraction and gradually ending existing production. That creates the final complication. The oil may exist underground. Current technology may be capable of extracting it, but economic, legal, and community barriers could prevent much of it from ever becoming produced oil. And with that distinction in place, the scientists' number finally begins to make sense. After examining the basin's conventional fields, fractured source rocks, untested areas, and nearly 150 years of exploration history, the U.S. Geological Survey calculated its central estimate. The amount of undiscovered, technically recoverable oil still hiding beneath the Los Angeles basin is 61 million barrels. That is the mean estimate, not a guaranteed total. The USGS calculated a range extending from approximately 10 million barrels at the conservative end to 201 million barrels at the upper end. Scientists also estimated 240 billion cubic feet of undiscovered natural gas and approximately 5 million barrels of natural gas liquids. In ordinary terms, 61 million barrels is an enormous quantity of oil. But inside the history of Los Angeles, it reveals the opposite. The basin has already produced or discovered approximately 9 billion barrels. The new mean estimate is less than 1% of that historic total. So the real headline is not that Los Angeles is sitting on another untouched petroleum empire. It is that almost the entire known scale of that empire has already been discovered. This comparison completely changes the story. At first, 61 million barrels sounds like proof that Los Angeles still possesses a major hidden resource. But divided across a huge basin, surrounded by dense development and separated into uncertain geological accumulations, that oil becomes much less straightforward. The estimate also does not describe proven reserves. Reserves have already been discovered and are considered commercially recoverable. The USGS number describes resources scientists estimate may exist based on geology and probability. Before any of those barrels could be produced, companies would need to locate individual accumulations, confirm them through drilling, and determine whether development would be legal and profitable. And technically recoverable only means the oil could be extracted using current technology and standard industry practices. It does not account for whether the oil would cost more to produce than it is worth. It does not guarantee access to the land above it, and it does not mean the required permits would ever be issued. In a remote oil basin, those distinctions might be secondary. Beneath one of America's largest cities, they may determine everything. Some undiscovered oil may eventually be found within conventional fields. New geological data could identify overlooked structures. Existing operators may recover additional petroleum from areas already surrounded by infrastructure. But the age of discovering giant new Los Angeles oil fields is probably ending. The basin has been explored intensely for almost a century and a half. Its largest structures have been drilled. Much of the land above the remaining potential is now occupied by homes, roads, and businesses, and the city is moving toward ending extraction rather than opening a new generation of fields. That does not make the assessment unimportant. In fact, it makes it more revealing. Scientists have measured the remaining frontier of a petroleum basin near the end of its exploration history. The number helps show what was once there, what may still exist, and how completely more than a century of drilling transformed the resource beneath the city. But it also exposes the final irony. Los Angeles may still contain tens of millions of barrels of undiscovered oil, yet much of it could remain exactly where it is. Scientists have now revealed how much oil may still be hiding beneath Los Angeles. Their mean estimate is 61 million barrels, enough to sound enormous on its own, but tiny compared with the 9 billion barrel petroleum system that came before it. The oil beneath Los Angeles helped shape the city that eventually concealed it. Open fields became neighborhoods, derricks disappeared behind walls and buildings, and a landscape once defined by petroleum became a metropolis where millions of people may pass above old wells without realizing they exist. But the greatest thing hiding beneath Los Angeles is not another proto-bay waiting to be discovered. It is the remains of an oil empire that has already given up almost everything geologists believe it contained. The oil is still there. The real question is whether the last undiscovered barrels will ever see the surface or remain buried beneath the city forever.